Yo, what's good, guys? It's your boy, Cameron John. So right now, what we're gonna do, I'm editing a food photography client called Spanking Hot. They just launched their restaurant. They're about to open officially on Saturday. So I was like, you know what? Let me just go do a quick run through of like my editing process for when I'm doing stuff for clients and whatnot, specifically in the food photography realm, since that's kind of more of my niche than anything else in the world of photography. We're gonna first go into Lightroom. As you can see, I already have this edited. I usually have a reference screen and stuff like that to be able to get an idea of what the original looks like versus like how I kind of, want the newer shot to look. So I'm gonna kind of just like start from scratch with this particular shot to show you guys exactly how I got to this finalized image right here. I kind of want the shot of the rice to be the star of the show. I kind of got some foreground here of the yams and the collard greens behind, but we're gonna focus on one thing at a time. We're gonna click R and you only have to do. I'm just gonna click reset right here. As you can see, you have this shot right here where there's a black background. This is what it looks like right now, kind of zoomed in. So first things first, do I want to keep the black in the back or do I necessarily feel like it's a distraction? For this particular shot, I feel like it's a distraction. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna crop in now. So we're gonna crop in a little bit, just to be able to keep a little bit of the collard greens in the back. And I'm going to kind of, just bring this up a little bit so that the yams is not too much of a distraction also, because you kind of just, for this particular shot, you just kind of want it to be foreground a little bit, all right? So I'm going to crop this in right here, boom, all right? Bring back a little bit of the yams, because, it's the yams, man, it's the yams.
Shout out here to the yams, sweet yams, so sweet.
We got a nice little crop in. I'm gonna bring this in a little bit more. So first things first, everything kind of looks evenly toned. Usually a lot of the time what I do, this looks like a decent exposure, but I'm gonna add a little bit more exposure just to make it pop a little bit. All right, you don't want to be too excessive. Obviously, you come here, you get into overexposure. So we're gonna keep it around maybe 44. Contrast, not necessarily. I could bring it up a tiny bit just to just make it a little bit more contrasty, but I don't want to overdo it. All right, usually bring the highlights down a little bit, not too much. The shadows, you kind of just spruce it up a little bit. I'm gonna bring the whites down a tiny little bit. Bring your blacks up a little bit, or add a little bit of texture. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to be excessive, because then obviously you could see the details in that grain of rice very well. So the more you bring it back, the softer it gets. The more texture you bring in, the sharper it gets. Don't necessarily need all that texture. That's kind of excessive. So we're gonna just bring it up a little tiny bit. Boom, clarity. Obviously, if you bring it up more, it kind of makes it more contrasty. And it also desaturates a little bit. So it's food photography. We don't necessarily need unsaturated food. Looks weird. You know what I'm saying? If I bring the saturation down, it doesn't make sense. So we're going to keep the saturation, probably bring the vibrance up a little bit. There was not too much light coming directly at the lens, but usually when there's light coming at the lens and there's a little bit of, light bleed, I like to bring up the haze a little bit. So with most of these, we kind of want to keep everything, a little subtle. It doesn't make sense to kind of go crazy. So we're going to go down here into the tone curve, bring this down a little bit, bring this up a tiny little bit. You can already see we got a little bit more pop, a little bit more life in regards to where we're at right now with this diff. That's the one thing with food photography. A lot of the time in the beginning, what I used to try and do is I'm going to even if I shoot it low, I'll just I'll edit it in Photoshop. But as a photographer, if you want to speed things up, one of your best things to do, to be honest, is to really sit there and try and get everything right in Lightroom. In camera, the best you can before you even take the shot. Cool. We're gonna bring this greens up a little bit, just a little sprinkles on top. Bring that green up a little bit, make that pop a little bit. Gonna go to luminance, kind of bring up the yellows and the rice a little bit, the oranges a little bit. So not really too much we have to do here. I usually, just do a little bit of masking to bring in some detail on the sharpness. Not necessarily gonna make much of a difference to the casual seer of the food, but it definitely does make a difference, at least in in making the food a tiny little bit sharper. You never want to really be excessive. Usually if I have like overhead shot and I didn't necessarily get the right framing, where the line's a little off, I'll usually go into transform and I'll click level, and it will kind of straighten it out automatically based off of the lines that are there inside of Lightroom. All right. So not too much we have to really do here. This was a very simple shot, but from the before to the after, you could already see that it looks pretty good. So I'm gonna do one of two more things, right? I'm gonna do some masking so that I can kind of darken down the yams and darken down the collard greens so that you can see that the focus is really the rice and not necessarily those two. What we're gonna do right here, I'm gonna shortcut and I'm gonna click M. So M brings up this masking tool where I can kind of, bring it up linearly. All right. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna kind of select the yams. You get me? So usually I have on O just to be able to see the line for what's being masked, but we could turn it off right now. And I'm going to bring down the exposure a tiny little bit just to darken it up. Obviously, if I bring it down here, it looks unrealistic, but you kind of just want to bring it down a little just to be able to, darken it down a tiny little bit. All right, I'll probably bring the blacks down a tiny little bit. I'm going to click M again. Double click to go back to the main screen, and then we're going to do it again for up here at the top. I'm going to click M, and I'm going to do the same exact thing. Bring this down a little linearly. We're going to darken up those collard greens. See what I'm saying? Only for this shot, because in the other shots, the collard greens look good. But you know what? For this, like I said, the star of this show is the rice. So we're going to bring this down. All right, same thing. We're going to bring that exposure down a tiny little bit. Maybe a little. Nah, it looks dang up there. So right here is a little better. A lot of the time with food, with products, with photography just in general, the first place your eye gravitates to is the lightest spot. So with this food, you know what I'm saying? You're trying to attract someone's attention when they're looking at the food on the menu, when they're looking at the food on DoorDash or Uber Eats, wherever on a menu, you want them to be like, oh, this looks good. So we darkened up the yams, we darkened up the collard greens, and now we kind of have our gravitational pull towards this beautiful scoop of rice. Now my boy Spank did last night when we was cooking this up. There you go. I'm going to click Y. Okay. What do you guys think? Does this shot look better or does this shot look better? This has a little bit more life to it. Maybe you could bring up this exposure a tiny little bit. Maybe I'm ODing. A lot of the time it's obviously up to taste. This still looks good. Obviously, if I bring this up, does this look good? Nah, overexposed. Obviously, I'm over exaggerating. But with this, you kind of got to use your discretion. You know what I'm saying? There's parts where even when it's up here, you could kind of see that it looks a little, blown out. You don't want the shot to be overly blown out. All right. So we're going to keep it safe. All right. We're going to put it at 0.35 and boom, we're good to go. So we got the before, we got the after. So y'all let me know what y'all think is the better shot. If you guys got any questions, I'm going to keep doing more of these. Just let me know. Like, subscribe below, and also follow me on Instagram. If you're looking at this on Instagram, drop a comment below and let me know what you think about this tutorial and if I should do more. All right. If you like it now, you're going to love it later. Peace.